Hello, and welcome to the metaphysical universe, where we dive deep into all things spiritual and metaphysical. Today, I will be interviewing Annie Emprima-Martin, who is a metaphysician and Army combat veteran. She specializes in bridging the gap between metaphysics and psychology. Today, we're going to dive deep into trauma healing through the Mural Method, where she is able to step into a person's body to feel their energy and to help them understand who or what is causing the suffering, as well as to help them understand why it's there. So let's get right into this. Hi, Annie. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to have you and to learn more about what you do. And so let's just kind of dive right in and tell me a little bit about you and about kind of like how you got into what you do and what you do. I
That's
know, kind of big, huh?
a
Lots of
big
stuff.
question.
Take your time.
I I got into this because I deployed in 2016 and something happened. Like something happened. I still all these years later cannot articulate what happened, but I can tell you I felt things. I had voices telling me they're very short, not long paragraphs of information, but go left, go right.
Wow.
Don't do that. Very short support. Sort of like I joke in one of the books I wrote how I felt like I was a field agent and I was getting my instruction from my handler, like be careful with this situation, things like that. And it has since really developed since 2016 in such a way that now I can do this full time to serve other people.
That's amazing. And I love that too. And it's interesting because I had kind of well, not that I was in the military, but a similar experience in kind of noticing and observing like that inner voice kind of like letting me know these situations are safe or not safe and to do these things or whatever. I had a like a little bit of a wild 20s, and I think that had I not had that inner voice, I wouldn't have been um, having the circumstances that I have now that have really saved my butt through like a lot of different things. So that is amazing that you've had that. And how is that like led into like the things that you're doing now, and what are you doing now?
I, well, how is it led is it gives me a sense of safety when other people have uncertainty. So when we were deployed, we were going into Iraq from Kuwait, and our plane started to get shot at. We were like tink tink tink, and the voice said, "Don't worry about it." Like okay, so I leaned back and just watched what was happening. When the pandemic hit, message came in: it's not in your path. It allowed me to observe things without being so immersed in it. And that's happened even when I was getting a divorce. My ex-husband at the time, but my husband at the time, my ex-husband now, he'd be in the master bedroom. I moved out. We're getting ready to get divorced, and he's on the phone with his girlfriend as loud as can be. And I snuck out of the spare bedroom, went up to the wall. I was going to listen, be nosy. Air conditioner went on. Like it's not your business. Right. So these things have happened many times in my life, and it allows me to step back and observe, which is really what has given me the experience that I have now to be able to step into someone's body and to feel what they're feeling in a very empathic way. Rather than telepathy, it's telepathy, and I can feel what the body's saying. So when I step in, I'm not hearing words so much as I'm feeling the experiences minus the history of it. So I'm feeling just what the nervous system is holding on to, just what the organs are holding, or just what the respiratory or circulatory system is holding on to. And then I can step out and make the assessment, and then I will see, they'll give me pictures of my own life. I say my system communicating with the individual's system of mind, body, soul, the we, will share back, this is what we want you to look at. This is what the body needs to have addressed immediately. So I do that. And then I also have the ability to take people up into a metaphysical equivalent of a psychotherapeutic modality called the Mural Method. And when we work in fourth dimension, time's infinity, but it's 3D, it's linear. Like what happened yesterday is yesterday. We can't go back to it. We can't go into the future. We're here today in the present. In fourth dimension, we can go up and down the timeline, just like if we were on a high walk, like a beam. We're walking on a beam.
Mm-hmm.
We can move backward and forward. But in fifth dimension, every single action is happening all at once. So when we go to use the mural method, your younger self has not yet experienced what you're experiencing, and she is not you. So when we go up, we have current self and then we have younger self, and they're two different individuals speaking to each other. So it's not through first person. We're separated. We are the observers, the adult observers, communicating with the separate identity that shares the same name. And that came back in 2020 is when that started to develop, and it just sort of unfolded in front of me while on the Clubhouse app, which was audio only. So I'm working with someone, and it was just that sort of voice, that sense said, take them to a safe room, and then through the safe room, take them into time. And I didn't know I had that ability. And yet the audience witnessed me do this. And I have been perfecting that for 4 years now, to be able to take people back, because then what we can do is, rather than trying to pull out the roots of trauma out of the adult tree, we go back to the day it was seeded. And that's a whole lot less energy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that will, it ripples through time.
And you had mentioned that, so is this part of doing hypnotherapy, or is this separate from it, or has this come from it at all?
My energy when I'm raising someone's vibration is too high for hypnotherapy. Do I have I am a level 1 practitioner for quantum healing hypnosis technique.
Okay.
But my superpowers are to raise the vibration. So I raise someone's vibration to fifth dimension rather than sedating into fifth dimension. And fifth dimension being when the subconscious comes forward and speaks instead of the mind.
Right. So you're raising their consciousness to be able to access that information versus putting them into like that subconscious state, like you're saying, the relaxation state. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Because yeah, I'm a hypnotherapist, and or at least I had been practicing for a while. I'm not doing that so much now, but now you throw in a lot of different things here, so let me see if I can come back to some of these. I know, right? So, and you'd also talked a bit about your system of helpers, and then also the things that you're seeing and accessing. So I'm kind of also curious about like how you created your relationship with them, but I'm also dually curious about like how your abilities kind of started. Was the origin during the military, or had you also experienced it earlier in life as well?
I experienced it earlier in life. I had two imaginary friends when I was 3, 3 years old, that disappeared when my family said that they didn't exist. And I didn't think much of it. I was like, oh yeah, I had imaginary friends. Like there wasn't much of a conversation until I deployed, and those two same voices came back. I know you. I know you. And they were the ones that would say, don't let that service member eat alone. Or, yes, your friends are all on the right side of the chow hall, but we want you to go left. And then I'd be walking, I'd got my tray, grown adult, tray in hand, walking down the left side. And I'm talking in my head, okay, what do you want me to do now? You moved me to go left. Where do you want me to sit? And there would be no more answer. The instructions ended. But then there would be someone sitting by themselves from my unit. And I would awkwardly sit down, like, can I sit with you? Like, is it okay if I sit with you? and we would have conversations. And that happened many times throughout my deployment, many times. So yes, it existed before, but if I had to put a date of when my story began, it would be the deployment in 2016.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And then that's specifically the team that you're talking about are those two
Mhm.
guides or whoever they are that have been
Oh no,
with you? Or you have a lot more?
yeah. If you're familiar with Richard Schwartz's internal family system,
I'm not. Please tell me about that.
so from a psychological perspective, they look at all of the voices, and when we have a lot of trauma, we tend to have more voices. So it could be the critical mother, it could be,
Right. The inner archetypes.
mhm,
Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
and shame can have a voice, and our religious leaders might have a voice, and some of my clients, when they come back to me like, your voice came in and it said that's not your business, reminded me that that's not my business, and that voice becomes a part of their navigation system.
Hmm.
My navigation system isn't just my experiences here on earth. It's the spirit guides, it's my higher self, it's uh, my language is a little bit different, but I'm trying to use like the most commonly known words. My higher power, all of those voices, it's like a conference room, a very, very large
Hmm.
conference room. And depending on what the subject is, those voices stand up and participate in the conversation like a subcommittee.
Gotcha. And so when you're doing like sessions with clients, then
Mhm.
you have your conference room with you, like participating through that process?
I'm stepping into their conference room.
Okay.
So I'm going
Okay.
to visit them, and I'll hear the we. The we could be the we is the collective.
Hmm.
When it's an individual, it'll be just the body talking, or just the soul talking, or just the inner child. They will speak more as individuals unless they refer to themselves as we. Then I know that there's plural. Multiple voices are in unison with this request.
Hmm. Hmm.
We want you to look at the left hip. We want you to focus over here.
Hmm. Hmm. And so that makes me wonder then what does a session like you with you look like? Because I'm unclear as to whether or not like all of it is internally within you, or that the person that you're working with is participating and sharing, like as you would in hypnotherapy, talking about their experience as but you said they're not going under, but when they're going up or wherever they're going, are they sharing that wisdom too?
Yeah, I step in if we're using the mural method, which is really when we're doing trauma work.
Hmm.
I step in, I tether into their energy. So when they're going back to talk to their younger self,
Hmm.
I'm monitoring their vitals. I'm monitoring the heart rate, I'm monitoring how they're breathing, and I'm feeling what they're feeling. So if the younger self says something and it creates a ooh pause, I want to stop the conversation and ask why that happened. Was that a trigger? Does that conflict with what you remember? And so we're having conversation just like this. Sometimes both of us have our eyes closed, and that's when we're going in for trauma work. If I'm doing just scanning the body, that's usually on TikTok Live is when I do that, or social media live where someone will come up for 20 minutes because we don't need to have a full hour long session for that. They come up, I can scan their body, and when I'm scanning the body's relaying back to say this section's not reporting any data back.
Hmm.
So I might
Hmm.
scan someone and their entire space below their waist, no information. That tells me there's trauma there that's so heavy it can't. The signal's muffled. It's not strong enough. So that's when I start looking at, well, how long has it been here? Where did it come from? How is it helping you? So that we can get that energy, the division or the department of the self, back to reporting information. And then when the whole body is reporting at the same signal pulse, then I know that we've cleared what needed to get cleared.
Wow.
So they're two different approaches for two different needs.
Hmm. Hmm. No, that makes sense. And that's really fascinating how you developed this whole approach. Um, so when this started like coming to you in your awareness through your guides and this information to start doing these things, did you have a foundation in healing or any of these kind of like trauma experiences yourself that you'd be able to relate to? Or is it just like your guides were like, nope, here you go, here's some work for you to start doing in life?
Oh no, 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 no. I have a very high degree in personal experiences. Very high degree. In fact, I wrote a book. It's in editing phase right now, but I wrote a book because uh, I in the scanning of the body, before I knew how to do that, I had about a year prior had lost my friend. She passed away. Really, really close friend. It was the closest friend I have here in Las Vegas. And I was okay the first 6 weeks. And then I was not okay. Full fibromyalgic episode. I did not know what was happening. It was so painful. I was dissociating and I could not control the pain.
Mm.
And the voice came in and said, this is for you to unravel. This is for you to understand. This is not for you to keep. So that was March of 2019. And I started looking at some, whatever was available, resources available online. And that's when the QHHT email came and said, become a practitioner. And I couldn't afford it at the time. So I negotiated. The voice in my head is like, this, but I can't afford this. You need to make this cheaper for me. I kid you not. I think that was a Thursday. And it was either the day or the next day after another email came in and said, this is a 4th of July weekend sale. We've discounted it. And I think it was like 35%. I'm like, see, touche, touche. So I enrolled in the QHHT. And what I found is it didn't take me long at all to learn it, the method
Mhm.
at all. Quantum healing hypnosis was the Dolores Cannon method that she developed back in the 70s and 80s. And many books, she wrote many books about it, where she was pulling forward the subconscious and doing a lot of past life regression work. So I'm in this, and it was like, yep, I got it. Yep, I got it. Yep. I could move through that program so fast. And it did not take me long at all. And then I had my first 50 people. That did not take me long at all. And I remember them saying, this is for you to understand the foundations of what you're going to be doing, but this is not yours to keep.
Mm.
You have your own to create. And that's what birthed the Mural Method, is that in doing the QHHT, so we've got 2019 and then the pandemic hits and we couldn't really do anything in person. So then I started going on social media because I had nothing else to do and I wanted to talk to people. And that's when I started practicing and just tinkering around. I say tinkering. I had QHHT under my belt, but started playing with the conscious mind rather than a somnambulistic state, the conscious mind. And I found that I had the capacity to do that. And that just evolved into what is now the Mural Method.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. I love that. And I think it's like it's so helpful to really have an approach like that because so many people are dealing with, these kind of like unknown, unsolvable like, illnesses. I'm dealing with my own too that I'm exploring. And so I'm really curious about like the relationship between illness and trauma and like kind of how
And your
you put
body right now is heating up the left side of the occipital ridge and your head, like, when you're ready, we're over here. Okay, all right.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But yeah, no, I mean like the relationship because like I think a lot of us have had trauma, and I think that to understand and break that down and be like, okay, the trauma is at the root of whatever you're experiencing, and that if you can work on like understanding that trauma and releasing that trauma or finding the message or information within that trauma, like that's really going to help you. And I love like how is it that that all came together? Was that just through your guides in the relationship with the trauma or and your own process of working through it, or was it all a part of the QH? I'm sorry, I'm asking a
It's
lot of
every, it's a
questions.
lot. I'm looking around my desk because I'm in, being that I'm writing we're editing the book, I have a lot of things. And the quote that came was from Conversations with God.
Yes.
And there's a quote that God says to Neil Donald Walsh, and he says that your greatest lessons are through experience. And I forget the exact quote, but it's like, and this you ignore, and this you ignore. So I have had so many experiences in my life of trauma that in writing the book, it was really easy to write it without having the academic background of psychology.
Hmm.
It's because I, for instance, when we were on the plane and it says, don't worry about it. When you're not worried about what's going to happen to you on a plane that's under fire, and you can lean back, you get to watch human behavior in a very different way.
Hmm.
Through the pandemic, I got to watch human behavior in a very different way. And I was able to document it and take photos in the supermarket and to just stand in the supermarket and feel what was happening. And I joke, we have a tiny little natural grocer kind of store called Sprouts. And I was walking in Sprouts and I'm smiling because this is research to me.
Hmm.
Not disrespecting anyone that was in a fearful state. I just had a different set of instructions for a different mission. So I'm in the supermarket and I'm smiling, and what I didn't understand, or I didn't catch on very quickly, but I started wandering through aisles, just looking around because it was really nice to be in a store and not have everything shut down. That 3 or 4 people in their shopping carts were following me, and I had created a train without consciously intending to create a train, but the people were following me because I kept smiling and nobody else was smiling.
Hmm.
I was not in a fearful state. And are when we are in shame or guilt or fear or grief, we're looking for an alpha leader. Our whole society is. And if we and that was the moment when I learned that lesson of, wow, in this moment people are looking and seeking for that calm alpha leader. And not that I volunteered like, hey, let me be this. It was just a moment where I was aware enough to pick up on what was happening. It wasn't until I turned around and looked at people and they broke state and I broke state and we dispersed. That's when it just kind of clicked in my head of, this was a classroom right now. You just learned something.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, it's very profound. I I don't even like what am I trying to say here? Um I am really fascinated by this whole process of how you brought all of this together. And you had mentioned something about the different dimensions in regards to
Mhm.
this. And I wanted to catch back to that as well. Um, could you explain like what you meant by the different metaphysical dimensions within that? Because I wasn't quite understanding that part.
Let's use math.
Hmm.
So I'm going to show you my pen box. For those that we learned this back in math in elementary school, but for many of us, elementary school was a long time ago. So
Yeah.
when we look at 0 dimensions, that's a dot. That's like one little corner of an object is a
Hmm.
dot. There's no length, there's no width, there's no nothing. When we go into first dimension, it's just one variable, length. So like when we're looking for area, it's length, width, right? That'd be the area of a square. So this square is 2 dimensions because it has length and width. Like if it's just this. But when we're looking at the cube itself, that one square, when it goes up 1 dimension from 2 to 3, look how much more space it takes. So that square being one-sided with no third variable can only have data that fills this. When we go into 3D, right, that's our entire world is pretty much 3-dimensional length, width, height. Everything in physics can be measured in some way, at least in our current understanding of it, because our evolution of this is going to be very different. Length with height. When we go into fourth, we have length with height time. So it's going to look, on a two-dimensional piece of paper, it's going to look like a breathing cube. But in fourth dimension, it's 8 of these cubes. So when we're in fourth dimension, like, think about how much data, just like wisdom, knowledge, intellect, how much more information is available to us when we go from a 3D object to a 4D object.
Mm-hmm.
So when we take this into 5D, it's 40 cubes of data. So fifth dimension is being able to go, fifth dimension is containing all of the individual experiences of everything that's happened to us simultaneously. But just like the square, the cube rather, when we come down, so let's say we come down from fifth, we have to decide what's important. What are we bringing back and what's compatible with this version of us?
Mm-hmm.
Like, volume is not compatible with a square. Area is. So we have to forego volume to drop down to 2D.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're coming down from 5D, we can access this information, but then we have to be very choosy of what we bring back, or we overwhelm the system because there's just not enough room.
Mm-hmm.
So coming back from fifth dimension, where everything's all at once, to fourth, which is sort of continuous, to third, we have limited data. And so when we're looking at dimensions, I'm referring to math.
Gotcha. And so when you're doing the work, you're going up to these different dimensional areas to access the information and then pull down what information you can into the lower dimensions. Do you find that, like you said, it's restrictive, bringing things back down into the third dimension or the fourth dimension even? Do you have challenges with retrieving the information that you're wanting to retrieve and bringing it back down to a third dimensional reality?
Sometimes we have to limit what we do, right? For instance, love in the fifth dimension, because think of like love magnified. Our physical body, as much as it wants that high vibrational love, does not have the compatibility to vibrate like that.
Mm-hmm.
It would cause us to be less dense and less physical. So we can go up, we can experience love, have the memory of it, and then come back down. But we can't take it with us, because it's just, it would cause our body to vibrate in such a way that it would be devastating to the body.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's a beautiful, wonderful thing, and we all want to have more love in our life, too much is also not okay for our body. Our brain can't process it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you had mentioned in your website and materials, I don't remember where it was, but that you don't necessarily teach the work that you do, but you do help people to do the work through their own process. But do you help people to access this, 5D information so that they can bring down that particular thing for themselves?
Absolutely. It's what's compatible for you.
Mm-hmm.
So you can use the Mural method. I'll take you through private training, what I call the private training side, because you're doing the work. You're going in and I'm coaching you. I'm tethered behind you. It's like when you're skydiving. I'm there to make sure that you land properly. But what you want to do in the middle is up to you. I'll guide you through it. When we go up, we're going to access people, places, and things. It could be deceased loved ones. It could be spirit guides. It could be whatever your belief system refers to it. So my very Christian clients are going to see archangels. My metaphysical clients are not going to see archangels because it has a religious affiliation. So whatever the belief system is what we see. If you don't believe that there's a past life, we are not going to see versions of you in a past life. We are going to be limited by what your belief system houses for rules. And when you go up, we might access, and we typically do, tools that would benefit you here. Tools might be clairvoyance. Tools might be a greater sensitivity or awareness. Tools might be, like I worked with 2 people that are massage therapists. They're ethereal armor, so they're invisible superpowers, tools. One of them has 8-inch yellow bands of light that come off of her hands when she's doing massages. And that's how she's getting into the organs, even though she can't penetrate past the skin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
energetically. Yeah.
yeah, that's not a tool I need. But when she went up, that's a tool she acquired because it benefits her here in her career, in her
Mm-hmm.
life.
So each person will go up and be able to access and bring down the things that are going to benefit not only like their healing process and releasing the trauma and the different things, but also intensifying maybe like their own gifts in this physical reality that they can use throughout the rest of their physical reality and beyond.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
It's about stepping deeper. And in stepping deeper, we have to include being useful.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no sense in going shopping in the metaphysical gift store if those tools are not useful here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So so each person is of service.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. So, and then, so that's essentially how a session would work then with you is going up and accessing that information and getting the feedback with the guides and the council and working through the trauma and the trauma areas. So, how do you recognize those things within the body?
It usually starts with people following me on social media
Mm-hmm.
because they watch other people come up, and those are short, they're 20-minute sessions. That's when that becomes a consultation in some ways. They come up, I start scanning the body because every part of our spine holds trauma. It's like filing cabinets or bins at the department store. Like, is this home goods? Is this health and beauty? Is this childhood trauma? Is this for me military trauma? Is this motherhood trauma? So different parts of the spine house different topics of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I'm like, okay, we've got this here, we've got this here, we've got this here. And I have charts that look like this. And we start putting that together.
Yes, yes, I'm familiar with those charts.
And then I mark it
Yeah.
up with all these colored pens for the different information coming in so that when we go in to do the private training, the 1 hour sessions, we know what we're looking for. We know where our starting point is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's usually the beginning, or they do a discovery session with me. It's a free consultation, and I look at their body because the body's going to tell me the story. Then when we
Gosh.
know what kind of a story this is, like, oh, this is childhood trauma. Oh, this is domestic violence trauma. Oh, this is some, like um, battlefield trauma from some of my audience. Then I know what we're looking at. I know where to start. Do we start with an example would be I work with some first responders because being out of control and being hypnotized is not necessarily their flavor. So they struggle with letting go of control. So when we go do the mural method, we're going back to maybe their rookie days when they experienced things before they had enough of what we might call thicker skin to handle difficult situations. So we're going back and we're gaining tools. They're going to gain tools by going back to those memories and giving that younger self the mentorship and the strength to digest the trauma then. And so when I know it's a first responder, I know we're dealing with that kind of trauma.
Gotcha. So you said, I'm writing this down here. You said digesting the trauma. Is that kind of like the crux of the work? Is really kind of just processing the trauma then?
If we can't name something, we don't know where to put it.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we name it, we have to have an action in place. So I look at the spiral of awareness, like, okay, this happened. The memory comes up. For instance, sexual violation at a very young age, like 3. That might have gotten suppressed because at 3 years old, you don't have words for what happened. So the mind's like, we don't know what to do with this. We're going to box it up for a later time, and it just takes up room in the attic. When we go in, we might get sent back to 3 years old. We walk right into the scene, and then we witness something. Now we know what it is. We have the awareness. We can name it. Then we have to digest. And usually with my clients that have gone through that, they have to come to terms with that's what happened. And if they don't, the body starts to inflame. It'll start a civil war with the mind. Like, yes, this did happen. The mind's like, no, this didn't happen. And you'll see all this inflammation come in. So we have to reconcile that. Like, okay, this did happen. This hurts. And then we can start chewing it down. We can start breaking it down. And then we have to go into a rest and digest period to let that settle and flesh out.
Mm-hmm. So if someone comes to, or when someone comes to work with you, um, does it vary the amount of time that it takes for someone to work through the trauma? I'm assuming depending on how much trauma they have, but is like how long of a series, and this may not even be a good question, but how long would it take to kind of work through, someone's trauma or trauma experiences?
The average is 6 hours, 6 1 hour sessions. So
Mm-hmm.
that's my commitment. You have to purchase a 6 hour package.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For some, it's eight. So it's like the average is six, but the top of that bell curve is between 6 and 8 sessions,
Gotcha.
which is it's between 33 and 50% faster than something like eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
Yeah, no, I'm curious about that because I've had a lot of trauma in my life. And so I'm curious for those people who are in the part of the bell curve where they have like trauma most of their life. um,
Complex,
what was that?
complex trauma.
Yeah, yeah. No,
That's right.
definitely.
Yeah.
And yeah, I have a lot of undiagnosed health problems that when I go in and they're like, "Oh, everything's fine with you," and I'm like, "But it's not."
And that's where I come in. I'm usually where people come to me, and right now it's TikTok, for as
Hmm.
long as TikTok's available. They will come up and and they'll say, I have this, I have fibromyalgia. Like, okay, fibromyalgia. Let's find out where the grief is. How long has the grief
Mm,
been there? Where did it come from? What kind of grief? Because those two go together.
right.
When we're looking at gallbladder issues, liver issues, okay, let's go find the anger in the body because it was probably diagnosed as depression when it's really internalized anger. So once we go into those organs and I can communicate with the organs start telling me when. And I have 4 questions. It's who or what are you? So it's like, is it anger? Is it grief? Is it shame? Where did you come from? How long have you been here? How are you helping me? And if we always come from the assumption that it's helping,
Mm.
whether it's an emotion or an inner critic or whatever that is, then we understand why it's there. Then we know what to do. We know how to put the plan together to take the next step.
Mm. No, I love that though, because it's so important to look at those things as that they're trying to be helpful. It's a survival mechanism that's trying to protect you. It just might not be a very functional one in a way that it's, helping you in the way that you want it to help you. But yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And that actually makes me think of when you look at Chinese medicine and the organ and emotion relationships. Is that related to what you're talking about there?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. And
Today,
yeah, and I've studied a little bit about that. When I studied acupuncture and looking at yeah, totally. And it is too much for me though. The memorization of all the points and organ systems and tongue diagnosis and pulse diagnosis and Chinese herbs was just a bit much for me. But I loved understanding that certain organs had a point at a time in the day, that they were at their full heightened, whatever it's called. And then also, like you said, that emotional relationship, and understanding that, anger has to do with the liver or different things. So when you have a manifestation of those things, to be able to understand that relationship. So did you know about that relationship before starting the work that you do, or did that come out as a part of it?
that that a little bit in QHHT, but the bulk of what I've learned is either through personal experience, and when it's not personal experience, it's through my clients. When we would start diving in, you just notice patterns like, oh, why 17th client in a row where we're going into the liver, what do they all have in common? And then start paying attention to the patterns.
Gotcha. And so, and to back up for a second here, when you were talking about, doing these sessions and, seeing things and experiencing things, clearly you're using, your energetic senses, your psychic senses, or whatever you want to call them. Those two have they been developed, since you were also very young and then came back into full force with the auditory experience that you were having with your guides, but the visual also, or the knowingness also?
Uh, it, yes and no. A fun story. I remember a ghost coming into my bedroom when I was a kid. They didn't feel threatening. I just knew they were there, and I couldn't see them and I couldn't hear them, which is what scared me, but not their presence.
Mm.
And then I started doing the mural method and taking people back to the younger self, and they would step into their bedroom, and one of them stepped into their bedroom, and it just clicked in that moment in working with them. All those times when the ghosts would come into my room, it was me.
Oh my God.
I was going back to visit myself in the past few years, because as I'm watching this happen, like, well, if it can happen to my clients, can I do this for myself? And I would come into my bedroom memory, but not from sitting on my bed. I would come in by the window, and I was like, that's where they always came in. So
Wow.
I was scaring me. So when you say, like, did you have it as a child? It's like, yes, the voices were with me as a child, but now that I'm going back, I'm realizing it was me warning me, because that's things that happen when the more you play in fifth dimension, and it's sort of the residual of going up to 5D working, coming back down, is that you start to get things, you start to connect dots.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Wow, that's amazing. I have never heard of that before as a thing at all. Now it makes me all curious, like for those experiences that people, are seeing ghosts or experiencing ghosts. Now I wonder, what is the percentage of it being, an external ghost versus their own selves, coming back and visiting themselves.
I've worked with people who came to me like, I have a demon, and practitioners, I'm like, that's a demon. All right, let's talk to the demon. Oh, it's not a demon, it's shame. Shame has been so suppressed that it manifested as its own persona. And this demon that's been following you is your own shame. Okay.
Wow.
Or I had someone who, they kept getting chased by this cloud, and it was scaring them, cloud. And we go in, and we were doing mural method work, and we were in the black room, which is, think of it like a fourth dimensional safe room. It's a vetting space. Nothing comes in uninvited. And there it was in the corner. And we were really confused because she was seeing this as something that's dark and shadowy. Like, well, you didn't have permission to be here. No one invited you here. And then we asked the questions: who or what are you? Where did you come from? Well, it turns out it was her tear cloud. She had such a difficult time crying because as a child she wasn't allowed to cry and show emotion, that she created this tear cloud. And so the tear cloud just followed her around and collected her tears so that she didn't have to cry. So it's not a scary thing at all. We just never ask curious questions.
I love this so much that you're talking about this and sharing this because, I teach like astral projection and things like this. And a lot of people are like, the weight of the succubus or the demon or the thing and all these things. And I'm always saying, you're not manifesting what you think you're manifesting. And so I would actually love to go into this a little bit further to really kind of explore like, why one shouldn't like react to these things with fear and to have that curiosity that you're talking about with this.
I have never met an actual demon, and I've done a lot of work. We've traveled to other planets. We've traveled in I have an astral group that they do. We'll go visit shamans from other areas of the multiverse, and never once have we encountered something that was actually scary. It was misunderstood. So we might enter into a place where all this energy is getting swirled around and it's pushing us back. But then when we ask the questions, what we find is that their job is to be the guard dogs or the security detail of this space, and we never showed our credentials, so
Mm.
we were not permitted in. So then what we do is we step back. Okay, what do we need to do? What's the protocol to enter? And sometimes in very weird ways it's to scan us, which is a little bit violating for newer travelers. They scan us to make sure that we're not bringing anything of a threat to their space. So they weren't evil, they weren't like causing us harm, they were protecting their space.
Mm.
And that I understand this.
Wow. Oh, that's so fascinating because so many people are reacting to these things in a state of fear, and thinking that these things exist. And also in the psychic development world as well, people are afraid of, the negative attachments and all the different things and jumping into that fear state. And those things really exist. And I have a lot of videos on YouTube, and I have, there's a fair amount of people that will comment about these realities. And my first instinct is, you're co-creating, a reality based on what you want to believe versus like having, like you said, the curiosity to understand like what this really is, and it's manifesting that way because you're choosing to see it in that negative light, and so yeah, I love
With
that.
attachments, people have come to me and they will, sometimes we stumble upon it, we're not looking for it, and sometimes they'll say, I have an attachment, I can't get rid of it, I can't get rid of it. And we start asking questions, and we find that they did invite it in. It was invited.
Mm.
When they were in a state of distress at 14 years old or 30 years old, spouse died, and it was, God, please send me somebody, I need help right now. They got first available. Okay, who's available? Go hold space for that person until something better can come along.
Mm-hmm.
Like, right, if you know CPR, you do CPR. You're not going to wait for the ambulance to come to do CPR on someone.
Right.
It's first available. And so through the questions, it's like, okay, well, how are you helping? Well, I'm not helping anymore. Okay, then it's then you have fulfilled your agreement. Thank you very much. And it releases from the body.
So it's just as simple as that, is just saying everything's good now, you can go, and the attachment will leave.
Yeah, it's waiting for the version of you that asked for the help.
Mm.
So if your version of you is 14, then we need the inner 14-year-old to come forward and say, I'm good now, thank you.
Mm.
Because they were tasked with protecting the 14-year-old, not
Mm-hmm.
the 42-year-old, not the 55-year-old, the 14-year-old. So when we bring forward the inner child or the younger self is like, thank you, I'm good. Then it releases. And it's not evil. It's not like spirit. I think we over Hollywood a lot of stuff. All right, everybody slow
Yeah.
down. Slow
Yeah.
down. And ask questions.
Yeah. No, and I think that's so important to have that inquisitive mind about these things and to not just have that assumption, these things are out to hurt us or that we are vulnerable, you know, in that way. So you're talking about astral projection. Is this also a part of the work that you're doing with the trauma work, or is this separate?
Mm-mm. You have to have 80% of your trauma work done to play in the sandbox,
Hmm.
to go.
And the sandbox is
Yeah,
the astral
big
projection.
metaphysical stuff. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Because that kind of playground work, when we are traveling like that, if you're carrying a lot of baggage, it can be a red flag for other things.
Mm.
So like we want to be as slick and smooth and stealthy as possible because it's nobody else's business where we're going. And if we can see what we're seeing in astral projections, then other people can see us traveling, right? It's like it's not there's no VPN in this. So we want to be as clean as possible so that our travel, our path is private.
Hmm.
And so I require that people they do their trauma work first to play in the bigger sandboxes.
Gotcha.
We can do the intro, like, hey, let's go little journeys. We don't go too far away. But if we're gonna go deep, we need to be clean. And the less stuff that we carry, the easier it is to travel as a group.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've noticed that myself, in my own astral projections, especially like if I'm dealing with a lot of like negative thought process and different things like that, that my astral projections tend to be darker
Mhm.
and, they don't go the way that I'm wanting to go, and things are happening that are totally against what I'm trying to like do. And I just feel like I'm in this lower vibrational plane, which I am. But and so yeah, I agree with you that it's so important to kind of work through that stuff, and at the very least like really make sure that you're not going with that kind of mental state on that day too.
And there are times when we have to honestly say, today's not the day.
Yeah.
Today's not going to give me the results I want. There's too much of a traffic jam going on. We're going to get put on a different highway. We're going to land in a town we don't want to be in.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's happened to me more times than I appreciate.
Hmm.
You had also mentioned briefly, and I want to touch on this, about the working with shamans.
Yes, not something that was on my to-do list. It just happened. And it tends to happen around the full moon, only the full moon, where I connect to the full moon, and there are a cast of characters, as I'll call them. So the hands of 1,000 grandmothers will come in, and it's very galactic energy. And they all overlay their hands. Uh, the hands of 1,000 grandmothers would be more for humanitarian healing, not individual people. So when I'm doing group healing and they come in, they're healing the whole group. They're bringing their energy, their wisdom. Many of them walked Earth, not all did, and they just come together as a consortium or a collective to assist. And they come in through me. I've tapped into elders of tribal groups that may or may not have walked this earth. They're somewhere, and I've taken groups to them as well, where we've walked we've done fire walking to clear and purge. We've done these ceremonial things that I'm there as a guest, and the elder is showing me what to do, and then I'm guiding my people through it as they're guiding their people through it. And it's like we're a neighboring tribe coming in to visit and observe their ways.
Mm.
So they're showing us and teaching us. And then these different leaders from different places, sometimes of earth, sometimes not, show up when I do those types of group healings on social media.
Gotcha. And so the group healing is on social media and not in a live format.
It's live. It'll be
I
live,
mean,
but
like, what I mean is
that
like in
person.
person, in the physical.
No, almost everything I do is virtual,
Hmm.
mostly because I have a global audience.
Gotcha, gotcha. And so when the shamans and things come in, this is your internal experience that you're sharing as you can see the shamans with you, and then you're sharing the experience with everyone's as kind of like a guided meditation experience, or how does that work?
Yeah, we go up to the black room first, so everyone goes up together,
Hmm.
which is going to raise the vibration of the group. And it is a guided meditation, but it's not. It's like a guided meditation if we had to compare it to something.
Hmm.
And then they will come through the same channels to get to that space. So it's like we're walking a bridge into that tribe's world.
Mm.
And so the elder I'm translating for my group, the elder will say, okay, now we want only the ones that have injured legs, they go first. So then anyone in my audience that is unable to walk freely, they go over however they need to go over I think this one's on my YouTube channel. They walk over it, and then they'll say, okay, anyone with mental anguish, mental disorders, mental anything that translated, because they're going to use different language. like spirits of the mind,
Mm-hmm.
for instance, is what he would refer to it. And then that group walks over, and then in his tribe, those are the same people that are walking through, the ones that went into battle with another tribe and they came back with what we would know as PTSD. So my people are walking over this fire, he's walking over, and then their spirit healers around them are doing what they know to do ceremonially.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do that kind of work, and then my group, I bring them back through the black room, back to the present time after going into that journey together. And it's all on
Oh.
TikTok.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, I love all the things that you do. I mean, so do you see your work like morphing into like more from here, or is it like pretty solidified at this point into a system that is pretty much going to move forward the way it is?
It's always going to evolve because the more sessions I have with clients, the stronger I get. So
Mm-hmm.
by default, we're all maturing together.
Hmm. I love that. And so, like, what am I going to ask here? It's interesting because, like, as we work together and as we talk together, our energy is really interesting together. And so, every so often, what's happening when I kind of like space out like this is I'm being very affected by the energies that are meshing between us, and all of a sudden, it's like I lose everywhere and everything that I'm going, and my head gets real fuzzy.
Uh
And
huh.
so I guess I just had to share that as we're like working together. This is what's been happening off and on. And so every once in a while when I get discombobulated, this hasn't happened to me with a guest before. And so whatever it is about your energies are very different than most people that are interview with. And so, yeah, wow. Either you have a really strong team, or like, and also the other thing is, like, I'm a very strong clairsentient, and so like when I do the interviews, like I put my energy forward to connect with the person so that we can kind of vibe back and forth, and I can feel. And so as I'm doing that, I am like swimming with your energy. And so, yeah, I don't know what that is. Maybe you can tell me.
People don't heal other people.
Yeah.
People provide resources and support for other people to heal themselves. So my vibration goes up,
Mm-hmm.
and what's happening in the entanglement is in that raising of the vibration, your body's like, oh, okay, now we have enough space to do this.
Yeah.
And it starts rearranging. So what you're feeling is really your system having the opportunity, like when we get better, cleaner oxygen, our lungs can take in more.
Mm-hmm.
So your system's acclimating to that slightly higher baseline.
Yeah, yeah, and
Oh,
it's making me real spacey, it's like, yeah, and it's exactly, it feels like I'm, yeah, it's hard to even like put words around it because I feel like my head's this giant like a bubble of like air, and I want to just get really spacey. Is what I
yeah.
want to do, is just kind of really space out.
You're trying to
Hmm.
expand into fourth dimension.
I am. And it's like, and I have to pull myself back together. Like, you're doing an interview here. Like, you got to pull this together. And so, yeah, there was a couple of times where I'm like, I am going to float off here into like the other regions of the universe. And so that's why a couple of questions are like really discombobulated because I'm like way out there. I know. I know. So I just wanted you to know that you're having that effect on me. So I would love for you to kind of share any kind of last words or wisdoms that you'd like to share with people before we go on to talk about like how people could reach you, but just what kinds of things that you'd like people to know about all of this.
Well, metaphysics, when we look at metaphysics, it is a pillar of philosophy. So people who may have come from a very conservative background, they think it's the Hollywood definition, but it's really the study of what comes after physics, what comes after what we can see and measure. That's metaphysics. It's not reliable, predictable, and repeatable like some science experiments are, because every person has their own belief system, every person has their own experiences, and that becomes the whole. So it is so uniquely independent of an experience from person to person based on those things. And really the core, as we had mentioned many times in the interview, is curiosity. Ask ask who or what are you, where did you come from, how long have you been here, and how are you helping me. If people can navigate that in personal conversations, if they can navigate that in their therapy sessions, if they can navigate that in their healing journey, curiosity will give us answers we never ever expected to have.
I love that. Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that you share that about metaphysics too, because that's one of the things that I work towards as well, and I'm teaching people about, the energy body and psychic development and all these things, and just understanding that these things are normal, that it doesn't have to be a fantastical thing, it's just a part of being an energetic being, and that they're energetic senses, and they have them just like you have physical senses, you have energetic senses, and just to normalize these things. And yeah, so thank you for explaining that, as well as, just having that curiosity. I think you're right. We need to approach things in a way where we're not jumping to fear reactions, and we're having that curiosity about our life and the things that are going on within it that are affecting us. So I love that. Thank you. So what is the best way for people to reach out to you if they want to work together with you? I know you said you had kind of different ways for people to work with you. What is the best ways to approach you and to do that?
My website, if oneimprima.com/links/. That's the abbreviated everything from my website. It's the landing page that is easiest to digest. So it's how to get a free 15-minute session, how to sign up for a TikTok demo, how to the training package, the coaching package, which we didn't talk about, is the intuitive coaching I can do to help people find their own answers without stepping into the metaphysical arenas, the fourth and fifth dimension. Just conversation, but in conversation, I'm paying attention to mind, body, and language, and where the incongruence is. So that's on there as well. So oneimprima.com/links/.
Okay. Yeah. And I'll definitely put all the information below for you so that people can access that and to reach out to you. So, oh my God, this has been so amazing. And I am definitely going to be reaching out to you because I need this stuff for sure. And I wouldn't mind floating out in the cosmos a little bit more, and having that fun. But yeah, I think anybody that, I think that we've all been through trauma, and it's just to some extent, and some more than others. And I think that what you're doing is so valuable. And so I encourage everybody to go check you out. So,
Yay.
yeah, thank you so much. Thank
Thank
you.
you.